Welcome to Season 3 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor, and each week I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and product creators to decode the myths, share knowledge and give you an insight into the industry. So grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax and listen in to Season 3 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. Today, I'm joined by a man who's previously held roles with PWC and Deloitte. He has extensive retail knowledge and experience, having worked in the retail sector with Musgrave Retail Partners Ireland, where his role involves supporting independent retailers to maximise their profitability. His current aim is the continued development of Bank of Ireland's retail growth strategy, and he's actively supporting leading retailers and stakeholders in the sector to grow and develop their business in a sustainable manner. Head of Retail Sector with Bank of Ireland, Owen Clifford, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you for having me on. Delighted to be here.
I'm delighted that you've joined us as well. I've got lots of, interesting questions that a lot of our listeners and the viewers will probably need answers to. We know things are getting a little tricky out there, so I'm delighted to have someone who's really knowledgeable answer those questions for me. But look, before we kick off, in the age-old fashion of this podcast, in the time it takes to boil a kettle, which I'm told is about 2 minutes, tell us a little bit about you and your role within Bank of Ireland.
Perfect. Well, I suppose a little bit of personal background. I'm a Kerryman that's exiled in Cork at the moment. I've led Bank of Ireland's retail proposition for the last 7 years, and I'm part of the sectors team, Melissa. And the sectors team was put in place because during the last financial crisis, I think some commentators, they evaluated what had actually gone wrong, what was one of the reasons for it. And as one commentator said, I think too many financial institutions, they had their backs to the window. So they weren't getting an external view. They weren't speaking with their customers, and they were operating specifically, I suppose, in an echo chamber. So how Bank of Ireland addressed this was putting together a sectors team. And all of us are recruited from our respective sectors. We're passionate about our industries. And I like to consider ourselves like the Avengers of Irish Bank.
I love that.
Without the costumes or the superpowers, obviously, but it is, look, it's a unique proposition. And look, it's great because it allows me to be an advocate for the Irish retail sector and getting out and meeting and engaging with retailers across the 26 counties, which is absolutely the best part of my role, because I suppose when you're out and about, you can act as a sounding board for retailers. You can give them a different perspective, and you learn so much from being out on the shop floor in the business, not behind the desk. That's not where you're going to find out where the needs and concerns of the retail sector are. So I'm not a house cat. It's great the last couple of years or the last couple of months to be able to get back out on the road again, meeting retailers, having been stifled through COVID and everything for the last couple of years. And thankfully, the feedback in terms of our proposition has been really positive, Melissa. And look, in my role, I engage with a wide range of retailers, from multi-store corporates to one-store operations. And really looking forward to the rest of 22 and 23 in supporting retailers as they try and grow and develop their business in what is a challenging environment, but there's also opportunities out there as well. I'm looking forward to supporting them with that,
That's fantastic. And what I think I've always really loved to kind of, when I've read what you've either been quoted as saying in the papers or even the conversations you've had, is the honesty, Owen. Instead of the doom and gloom, instead of the kind of oh my goodness, retail's collapsed or, it's going out of business, you've just been brutally honest, which I think an awful lot of people within the industry, whether they're retailers or suppliers or wholesalers, you talk the way they do. But I suppose, how are we now? We've talked about where we've come from with COVID. How, in your opinion, how's the sector performing right now in this kind of, as we go into autumn 22?
Yeah, I'll give you a Kerryman answer. That's a bit like asking a Kerryman for directions, Melissa. What they'll generally say to you is, it depends where you're coming from. And I suppose it's very similar, with the retail sector and the Irish retail sector. It's such a broad church that, any commentary on the performance needs to be nuanced and reflective of the subsector, the location, the type of sales model they have. Is it store, online or omni, a mix of all of them. And I think you're right. Look, a lot of the media outlets and the commentators out there, they're taking a broad brush approach, you know, and it's very, very generic. And it reminds me a little bit of Chicken Little, you know, it's something the sky is falling down, you know, because it goes from online, when online was going to be the death knell of local retailers. Then it was COVID. Then it was the problems with the supply chain coming out of Asia. Unfortunately, now we're dealing with a cost of living crisis. But if we're looking at, I suppose, the last couple of years, the sector has proven really resilient. And even in the latest CSO numbers, the retail index, we're looking at 9.5% of sales volume increase compared to the same period in 2019. And now that excludes bars and cars. But what's happening is that the media are taking it on a month-by-month basis. And there's been so much fluctuation and so much change. And because of COVID restrictions and whatever, that's creating headlines. Oh, retail is up and retail is down. People aren't spending anymore. And you need to take a much longer term approach to grasp what the actual trends are. And I take a lot of comfort from the fact that compared to 2019, which was a normalized trading environment, that volumes are up 9.5%. You know, I'm not looking at the value, because obviously with inflation, prices are going up. I'm looking at the actual volume levels. And I suppose from speaking with retailers around the country, it's quite clear that the renaissance of our regional and the suburban stores, they're still continuing. I'm seeing from the retailers I'm engaged with strong investment in their stores, revamping their stores. Now that's primarily grocery and convenience, because they've performed, you know, quite well over the last.
And I think actually jumping in on that, Owen, that's really exciting. I am seeing new store openings, whether that's with bigger kind of, as you said, the bigger nationals or even smaller. People are doing shop refits left, right and centre. That's got to be exciting, that there is an investment or a reinvestment happening within the industry.
No, completely. And I think from there's a couple of triggers that are driving that, Melissa. What we're seeing is that undoubtedly a number of UK fashion retailers in particular would have left the Irish market because they were just retracting their overall base on a worldwide basis. So that's given opportunities for Irish retailers to get really high profile sites in prominent locations at better terms than what they normally would have been from a lease perspective. And again, that's great for them. You know, it's a new opportunity. It mightn't even be for a long term. It could be just for a pop-up and on a seasonal basis. But again, it's allowing them to engage with a new type of customer. And what we're also seeing is that, I suppose, COVID was a catalyst for a number of retailers to say, now is the time to move on. Now is the time for the next generation to take over. And what we're seeing is that's the next generation are getting an opportunity now to purchase a store, take over a family business. And I think, as I said to somebody recently, that's vital for the vitality of the sector. It's absolutely crucial that we're seeing that next generation coming through. So those opportunities are great. And look, I don't want to be seen as completely unbalanced. You know, you said about being honest. If there's challenges out there as well. Absolutely, there's challenges there. Personnel. Look, we're in a period which thankfully we have very low unemployment, but that's creating challenges for retailers. And it's not alone recruiting the best people, but actually retaining the best people as well. It's getting really, really difficult. And I'm seeing that particularly in Dublin, where linked to the cost of living crisis, I suppose, and the cost of accommodation, that some people who traditionally would want to work in Dublin city centre from a lifestyle perspective and from the buzz that they'd have got out of it, are now saying, this is costing me too much. I'm going to move and I'm going to go regionally or into the suburban areas. And those retailers are getting the opportunity to have those staff. But on the flip side, with every challenge, there's an opportunity. And what I'm seeing is that retailers are now seeing the opportunity to invest in people development plans, because for too long, I suppose, that was ignored. They now recognize they need to have a really strong development plan in place, which trains up their existing staff and makes sure that those people that are in their business have the right skill set into the future for the business. So that's really, really positive. And I think the other area we're seeing is that retailers are investing appropriately in automation and in technology, which is taking out those really labor intensive, the drudge type tasks, which that when the staff were told this is on the agenda, they were going, oh no. One of the things, that was pushing people away from elements of retail. So being smart around that, investing in technology, taking out that manual intensive type task, which means then the knock-on effect is that you've happier staff, and you've happier staff, better service, more engaged customers. So again, opportunities are coming from the challenges. And there's, I suppose, the other big one at the moment, which a lot of retailers, especially those that have, I suppose, a heavy reliance on refrigeration and air conditioning, the cost of energy as well it's huge at the moment. We've seen headlines recently about cost doubling and trebling for people, and in a tight margin business, that is significant. But again, the opportunity that's coming is that people are investing in energy efficient equipment and operations, and that there's a long term. Hopefully, and I think we are pretty sure that the energy spike is going to be temporary. But if you're looking at the long term, energy efficiency and a focus on the carbon footprint, that's going to be long term. It's coming to, we're seeing it with international suppliers. They're expecting the retailers that they deal with to have an appropriate carbon footprint. ESG is on the agenda for corporates. It's on the agenda for the consumer. It's not going away. So anything that will support a business in reducing that carbon footprint into the long term and making themselves more energy efficient is going to be a benefit for the business into the long term. So again, opportunities coming from challenges. And I think that's what, when I'm out and about meeting with retailers at the moment, that's what I'm trying to get across to them. Yes, we're in a very challenging time at the moment. We need to look at where the opportunities are and how we can actually drive those opportunities to support them into the future, you know?
Sounds fantastic. And I love the idea as well that the opportunities that you're seeing and that key retailers are seeing out there are for the long term. This is for the sustainability of the business. But also, even when it comes to something that, like you've mentioned there about, you know, better refrigeration that might be better sustainably for the long term, your customers now expecting this. So again, it's a really nice way of sharing a good news message or a story, whether that's people retention, whether that's investing in people, or whether that's investing in refrigeration, that sharing those good news stories with the customer makes them want to shop with you. So it is, again, it's this win-win that yes, there are issues out there, but if you seek the opportunities, it's a winner for everyone. I love that idea.
No,
I hate to almost bring us backwards now and talk about the negativity, but it would be really remiss of me not to ask you while I have you on.
Yeah.
And I know we've touched upon that, you know, the media don't help sometimes. And I think those are within the industry get quite frustrated that they're opening the paper, they're listening to the news on the radio, and it can be doom and gloom. Talk of a recession, you know, and it's definitely been out there.
Yeah.
Is it coming? What's your insight? And I suppose, is it already affecting customer sentiment?
Yeah, look, I think with customer sentiment, I'm always a little wary, because I think, you know, he said one time there's more fiction written on Excel than on Word, you know. And I think we need to be careful on how data is and customer surveys are interpreted, because look, even during because of lockdown, the fluctuating nature of spend patterns and everything, you know, it's been hard to establish what real recurring trends are, because it hasn't been, when restrictions were lifted, you got that bounce up, and then because of, you know, news coming again, then it was coming back down. So that what I said earlier on, you know, comparing week on week and month on month is probably not appropriate, because it's not long term enough to get a trend. But undoubtedly, look, with sentiment has been affected. Look, we've all been bombarded with bad news over the last couple of years. You know, it's been the Brexit crisis, the COVID crisis, supply chain, Ukraine, and then cost of living now. And I think that level of fatigue from people is reflected sometimes in the answers that they provide to the surveys, for, you know, establishing what sentiment is as well. You know, everybody, you know, if somebody's asking you in a survey, you don't want to say, oh, I'm fine. You know, it's kind of, I think that element of fatigue is feeding into it. But if we look at the facts, and we're in Bank of Ireland, we would monitor the personal saving levels that our customers would have, and the Central Bank of Ireland would also do the same across all of the banks. And the personal saving levels, thankfully, are at record levels. You know, they're very, very significant, and that's a big difference compared to when the last recession hit in 2008. You know, people were really, really leveraged, and the level of savings that they had were nowhere near what we had at the moment. And then we're also seeing, you know, aligned with that the spending data that I alluded to earlier is still ahead of you know, pre-pandemic levels. So, but look, the constant commentary on inflation, that's undoubtedly going to impact on discretionary spend. You know, we're as humans, if we continuously hear that, you know, we're going to say, God, do I need to pull back in terms of my spending? And look, I don't want to be flippant. You know, I think that over the next couple of months, it's going to be worrying times for some people, because you've got back to school costs, the energy costs. There's going to be more of a requirement as we move into the winter months, and then you've got people who treated themselves because they had been locked down for, you know, they treated themselves over the summer with holidays and foreign holidays and whatever, you know, that those that start repaying holiday loans. So there is going to be a pinch, you know, for some people, undoubtedly. But I think we can take comfort that based on the savings data that is there, there's also many people that can absorb this. And I think if the media in particular continues to be, you know, so negative, that there's a danger that, you know, it becomes self-prophesizing and we nearly talk ourselves into a recession. And the next couple of months, they're critical for retailers. I've been speaking with leading retailers over the last couple of weeks around what trade has been like during the summer months. And thankfully, Melissa, look, it's remained really robust during the summer months. And what the feedback they're saying is that customers are definitely more value conscious. And I think when I'm having the conversation with retailers, I'm saying to them, they have to be careful around the value element. And there's an onus on them to demonstrate that value isn't just about price. That value is multi-layered. Value has to be about quality, about provenance, about the after-sale service that they provide, the accessibility, the customer service. Value is all of those elements, and they can't just focus on price, because if they start focusing on price, it becomes essentially nearly a race to the bottom and a discount spiral, which impacts on what the customer perception of the store is, of the retailer is, of the product is. And in what is a low margin business, if you start discounting, it can, going back to the point that you made, it can impact on the sustainability of the business into the long term. So they have to be really conscious around that and shout about that appropriately around the value that they're bringing. And again, just not focusing on the price level. But taking it on an overall basis, yes, there is pressure there will be pressure on discretionary spend over the next couple of months. But the position that we're in as a nation and the opportunity that's there for retailers who continue to engage with their customers, it's still there, and we're in a much better position as an economy, and we can take than we were back in 2008, and we can take comfort and positivity from that over the next couple of months.
That's really good to hear, and I think that's encouraging. Yeah, it's going to be tough, and you've said that, and you've been really honest again. But I think, as you say, we'll get through this by the sounds of it. It isn't going to be as scary, and we all remember 2008 so well. I think it's very much still there with so many people, but it's great to hear then that actually we keep doing what we're doing and we stay focused, especially in so many of those areas that you mentioned. We'll get through it. But I have to say, and I was beaming when you use that word value. Anyone that has worked with me or has been to a training or a webinar, that word value is so incredibly important, and understanding that value doesn't mean slashing your prices and ruining your margin and literally giving away your stock, because that's not expected nowadays. But what is expected, as you said, is the expertise. It's that aftercare service. These are things that actually, as a retailer, you do for free, but it gives you long-term customers and it gives you loyal customers. And as we head kind of into this golden quarter, like we are heading like a juggernaut towards the Christmas kind of season, as I say that very loosely, whether that kicks in after Halloween or whether that kicks in, you know, as you said, as soon as back to school is over. How would you suggest that really retailers and makers out there make the most of this? You know, bearing in mind what you've just said about, you know, it is going to be a little bit difficult over the next few months. The cost of fuel and heating your home and isn't going to go down. So the money that is out there, whether that's savings for those that have it, or whether it is really what's coming in month on month for many people, how can retailers make the most of those sales coming in?
Yeah, I think you're right. The next quarter is absolutely critical. And from speaking with retailers, leading retailers and progressive retailers out there, they're focused on on a couple of areas, and I'd support them in the areas that they're focusing on. The first one, it seems, it's retail 101, and it's what we just spoke about there. It's excellent customer service. It's taking the time to meet, to listen to their customers, to act on the feedback from the customers. And look, the strongest relationships that are out there is where, you know, you get two-way communication is completely embedded, and you know, retailers that demonstrate that, you know, they're providing advice, knowledge of their product and service, and the customer then, where the customer feels that their feedback is being acted upon. I think that's where you have a really strong relationship, and that's the best way to build loyalty, because if loyalty has been built on price only, that's a shaky foundation. So, you know, it's all about the service and getting that excellent customer service embedded in the business. So that's the first area that those progressive retailers are going to be really targeting over the next couple of months and shouting about that. The other area then is around omni-channel, and I suppose retailers being channel agnostic really, and having that integrated mix of online and physical store, that is, you know, no longer can the two operate in silos, because as customers, look, we want to be able to browse online, we want to be able to browse in store, we want real-time pricing, we're getting really demanding, we want next day delivery, and I think retailers realize that, you know, having an end-to-end system that incorporates click and collect, click and reserve, virtual showrooms where we as customers can personalize our products, that's really vital. But I think the overarching thing around all of that is that it's user friendly, yes, and that it's reliable. You know, it's having a system in place with, you know, without appropriate contingencies or without it being user friendly. You can actually be brand damaging. We've seen in the last week or so, Waterstone's put in place a new system, a new management system, and what happened was that they just didn't do the background work in terms of the contingencies. And now what you have is that the individual stores around the country are running out of stock of new releases. So what you've done is you've annoyed your stores, you've annoyed your customers who can't get it, and you've annoyed your publishers who are saying new releases are getting out there, and the customer can't get them. So, you know, having it robust, having done the appropriate testing, and not just rushing in to do it because it's required is key. And look, I think what I'm seeing is where the best omni-channel systems are in places where it's integrated and it's smart, and I think it's it's using the stores appropriately. I think the last maybe 12 months in particular, I've been working with retailers to make sure that they maximize the use of the individual stores that they have and the physical stores that they have in conjunction with their online offerings. So if using data appropriately, if somebody orders online and the data picks up, gets the geolocation, and if there's a store in 20 or 50 kilometers, that the order is fulfilled from the store as opposed to being fulfilled from a central warehouse. So number one, you're getting a quicker delivery. Number two, you're reducing the carbon footprint. Number three, you're hopefully able to entice the customer into the store, maybe with a smart offer, and say, you know, you can pick up a bonus if you collect in store as opposed to us delivering. And then there's an opportunity for the retailer to upsell. And also it's very handy in terms of returns as well. It means that, you know, you're getting around that issue for a lot of people around charging for returns, stuff which they don't want to do. But if you can have something where return into the store, no cost with it.
But it's actually interesting you say that, because what you're not saying, and again, I'm listening to this, is that all these little things are making life easier for the stores. It's making life so much easier for the customer, but it's also got to be adding to your bottom line. And even whether that's not in sales, it's adding to your profitability because you're being more efficient. The lack of returns, hopefully, is also adding to that bottom line. So even though you might not technically be increasing your sales, you're really minding and protecting that margin, which again, over the next few months, with the cost of your electricity installs going through the roof, and we know that, especially in the grocery sector, that you are just being a little bit more careful.
You are. It's absolutely that it does feed, everything has to feed down to the bottom line. And that type of smart use of the stores is driving efficiencies, especially, as you said, from cutting out deliveries, cutting out those costs. And I think, look, undoubtedly what I've seen from Melissa, from the last 12 months is that the retailers that are getting the most productive return from their online are those that are utilizing the store infrastructure behind it really, really smartly. So that's something for people to focus on over the next couple of months. And the other area, it's something that was developed and there was a reinvigoration of it over the last during COVID, was the whole area of community and shopping local and demonstrating the positive impact that the retailers are having, be it on employment, but also the social fabric of their communities. And there's an opportunity that, and there's first of all, there's a worry that maybe some of that could be eroded and people forget, with recency and everything, people just forget about it. So they need to keep reminding people of that over the next couple of months, why it's important to shop local, why it's important to have vibrant communities, and they can be smart around it. What I've seen, and that's worked really well, is where local retailers have come together. They've created nearly a partnership or an ecosystem where their own products are on each other's online platform. So they've got nearly a marketplace, and then that means that for the customers looking in, you're exceeding their expectations because they can access in one easy place. And then it's also for the retailer, it's driving alternative income for each of those individual retailers as well. So it's something smart to focus on. And then look, the other area as well that we spoke about, it's all about value and about that. And I think with value, we spoke about what about the product and about everything that they give, but retailers need to take a step back and see as well, what's the market perception of my brand and of my store, and does the look and feel of the store, does my marketing material, does the communication that I have online, does that reflect the actual proposition that I'm providing, be it in terms of quality or be it in terms of price or be it in terms of the overall breadth of what I'm providing to the customer. Sometimes it's, as retailers, and because it's been so busy the last couple of years, you become completely immersed in getting the job done, getting the product ordered, getting it onto the shelf, and not taking a step back to see what's the perception of my store and what's the perception in the market, especially in a value conscious market. How am I going to be different to my competitors out there, and what does the customer think of me, and how can I change my offering or change the communication subtly to keep engaged with the customer. So they're the key areas at the moment, and I think, look, for when I'm speaking with retailers, what I'm saying to them, there's around the value piece, it's probably, there's three things linked to value. You have to deliver value, you have to demonstrate that you value the customer, and then you also have to reflect the community values. So it's three different ways of looking at value. And I think if you focus on those, you're well positioned, for the next couple of months.
I think it's a really strong message. And again, perfect timing this time of year as we lead up to Christmas. And as you said, it fits really nicely again with this shop local kind of initiative, which we have to keep driving, because this is really what's going to keep our local economies going as times get a bit tougher. Well, Camille, I can't believe that we've been chatting so long and so many nuggets here to take away. But before I let you go, Owen, final question. What's coming up for you and I suppose Bank of Ireland over the next few months?
Yeah, look, the next couple of months are very, very busy. Thankfully, in terms of a lending perspective, which is the focus where I'm supporting retailers around the country. There's the first element would be around the store purchase activity, trying to close out those store purchase activities. That's really exciting because it's seeing new retailers coming into established businesses that are there and putting their own stamp on the business and trying to embed themselves into the community. So supporting them to grow and develop their business, be it a retailer taking their first step into store ownership, which is great, or else a retailer who has decided with their family, we're going to expand, we're going to have our second store or our third store.
Exciting. So
really great. That's great. And there's a lot of a strong pipeline of that business coming in the next couple of months. And the other area then is around revamping the stores with a particular focus on energy efficiency and and getting that energy efficiency processes and equipment in place. People are very conscious of that. So again, supporting retailers around the country with that is going to be taking up a lot of my time. Then on a broader basis, look, I suppose we're seeing that there's a number of banks that are leaving the Irish market. So there's retailers out there who are maybe worrying around what's the next step going to be for me. So thankfully through word of mouth, I suppose our proposition is recognised as being strong, and that we are really, really committed to the retail sector in Bank of Ireland. So I have a number of meetings with retailers who are seeking a long-term partner, and again that's exciting, because for myself, I'm meeting new businesses, seeing how different businesses operate, what their plans are, and what their future growth ambitions are, and how we can help and support them into the future. And then personally, I have myself and my wife. We have a 6-month-old twin girls, so we have a christening coming up. I have my baby brother who's 32, but he'll always be the baby in our family. His wedding is coming up in 2 weeks' time. So with all family events like that, great fun, great excitement, and I suppose there'll be a bit of drama along the way as well, which is always good. So
I love that.
50 times ahead, yeah.
Keeps you grounded, I'm sure, Owen. Keeps you grounded.
It does, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me today. A fascinating conversation. And I think real truth and honesty in so much of what you've said, as you've said, not only from your own background within the industry, but speaking and talking to so many retailers, I think it's just given a really good, fresh perspective in what we're looking into, and a real honest kind of viewpoint as to what's coming down the tracks that hopefully I'm sure a lot of listeners and a lot of viewers will really appreciate, because I think it's just calmed the mood a bit, that it's not all doom and gloom coming up, that it's a lot more positive than I think many of us thought it would be. So Owen, I will certainly pop your details up as we pop this podcast out. Connect with Owen on LinkedIn, and please, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please like, share and subscribe to the Retail Tea Break podcast. And in the meantime, I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.